Hey guys, it's your pal Victor here from Cult Classics and Cult Following, and I'm catching up on some South by Southwest reviews that ended last week, but we watched a lot of stuff for that show, and I'm gonna kind of catch you up on some of the cool genre slash kind of cult following, cult classics kind of stuff, and some of these capsule reviews. So right now I'm doing a review for the upcoming Amazon Prime original series called Them. And I was able to watch the first two episodes as part of South by Southwest. This show is by Lena Waithe, who was one of the writers in Atlanta. She's also an actress. You might know her from you might know her from Ready Player One as H. She's also in Bad Hair and a lot of the other movies. She's like a good writer, and little Marvin, who is like the visionary behind the show. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they feel like this is kind of like Jordan Peele light. The show is called Them, and the advertising seems sort of like Us. Excuse my purge hat here. But it's not that at all. It's actually a really interesting show and kind of scary, actually. And it follows the Emery family. There's Henry, who's played by Ashley Thomas, and his wife Lucky, played by Deborah Ayurinde. And they have two kids, Ruby and Gracie. And they at the beginning of the show, on the first episode, we see that they grow up in North Carolina, where life there is not very kind to them, to say the least. And a lot of the terror in them comes from this sense of like feeling like they don't belong, anywhere, and kind of being the them in a community that doesn't want them. And just to put this into fact, the show kind of is set during this period called the Great Migration, which it explains during a voiceover is when, blacks trying to scrape the Jim Crow South in the 50s started looking for industrial jobs on the West Coast, and they moved from North Carolina to Compton, California, which at the time basically had covenants that didn't allow colored people to live there. And I found this whole thing really fascinating because I grew up in Carson, which is the next town over from Compton. So a lot of this is interesting, and a lot of things. I think a lot of you guys might understand this, because I think when people think of Compton, they kind of think of black people, but they don't realize that it started off as kind of like this white enclave. And at the same time, the Great Migration happened of, black working class families looking for opportunities on the white West Coast. This other phenomenon was happening at the same time from these formerly covenant held properties called white flight, which I'm sure you've probably heard of. If not, you can Google it and you can see how messed up it is. And basically, it's like as soon as black families move into these white areas, they're afraid their property values are going down. So they're going to move to like the next white enclave, which in California at the time ended up being Orange County, and specifically like Anaheim, where a lot of these families would move to. Walt Disney Americana, and that's why now Orange County is basically the biggest white kind of Republican like threshold in all of California, because it doesn't really represent the rest of the state it lives in. This is kind of interesting. But yeah, they moved there because Henry gets a job working in aerospace, which again was a big industry in the 50s and 60s. In Southern California. They're kind of looking for a fresh start, and as soon as they move in there, the people who live in this neighborhood, specifically Allison Pill's character Betty, and Allison Pill is like terrifying in this show, is looking to get them out as soon as possible. and try to inspire other people to go along with her and get these people out. Also, the show also has a really cool intro sequence that kind of like shows like the way these neighborhoods are plotted out, and you know, black people moving in, white people moving out, you know. But in a lot of sense, I would say the closest this thing is to something you've probably seen, it would be akin to like Get Out meets Lovecraft Country, because it does kind of have a little bit of that Lovecraft Country like anthology but not vibe to the show going on. And it also feels a lot like Hereditary in terms of the performance by Deborah Irindi, who's, when she moves in there, we realize has a lot of trauma, and even her husband says, you know, we brought her here to get her right. And it deals with a lot of terrors that, you've seen in Lovecraft Country, where the police are the enemy, you know, nothing's really safe, you know, that kind of like, you know, not Sunset County vibe as much as it was in Lovecraft Country, but more like the feeling that you don't belong and doing anything you can to get rid of them literally. And they do some really drastic things, and there is perhaps a hint of the paranormal, perhaps a hint of something that doesn't belong there on the show. And it's handled really well, and it's kind of interesting where you see like this little girl's the daughter, Ruby, her imaginary friend, might not be so imaginary. And when you pair that with someone who's kind of losing their mind, it also has kind of a Shining vibe to it. But yeah, then there's just like this little terror of just having to, be the standard bearer for your race when at a time when you have things going wrong in your life, and if you can't quite measure up, that's it for you. So I feel this show's really promising. I'm excited for where it's going. I've just seen the first 2 episodes, but it debuts on April 9th, and I strongly encourage you guys to check it out. The show's awesome. Performances are great. Like I said, it doesn't feel derivative of Jordan Peele. I will say, just because there's been a couple movies and a TV show that's explored the Black experience in horror doesn't mean that's all there's to say about the topic. And I think little Marvin has a really unique vision, so I'm excited to see where it goes. The writing by Lena Waithe is really good, and the performances are awesome and really terrifying. So especially the second episode, where you find out a lot more about Henry. So check out them when it comes out on Amazon April 9th. And until then, stay tuned for more South by Southwest reviews here at Cult Classics. Later, guys.